Hello and welcome to Freedom Watch, your daily dose of raw liberty online at foxnews.com/Freedom Watch. I'm Judge Andrew Napolitano here, defending freedom, defending your natural rights, and defending your right to have a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution. We all know what happens when we rely on the government too much. It gets authoritarian and we get weak. Our children grow to expect from the government what we once did for ourselves. Government is a fearful master. It is not faithful to us. It is not truthful to us. It can't produce for us. It doesn't obey its own laws. It doesn't keep us safe, and it won't leave us alone. It is mortgaging our futures, raising our taxes, and treating us all like children. There are a few who believe in this and fight for this and who uncover all of this with the passion and zeal of my next guest. He defended freedom as a Navy SEAL. He fought for personal freedom as the governor of Minnesota, and now as a successful TV show host and New York Times best-selling author, he is the champion of exposing government fraud and lies. His book is American Conspiracies, Lies, Lies, and More Dirty Lies That the Government Tells Us. Joining me now is former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura. Governor, welcome to Freedom Watch.
Hi, Judge C. How do you get away with doing an introduction like you did there?
Because I believe in my heart what I've said about you. I've admired you from afar. And I must tell you, we don't do books on Freedom Watch, but this kept me awake over the weekend. And I just wrote a book which hit the New York Times bestseller list called Lies the Government Told You, Myth, Power, and Deception in American History. So you and I are telling slightly different versions of some of the same stories. And some of the things that you have told me have terrified me. You once told me, Governor, that there's a CIA agent in every state house in the union, whether the governor of a state knows it or wants it or not. Is that true?
Well, I can only make the assumption, Judge, that I can only speak on behalf of the state of Minnesota. But I'm assuming Minnesota's not the exception. Yes, there's an embedded CIA agent. They do double duty as both a civil employee as well as work for the CIA, and they're there when you leave. They don't serve at the pleasure of the governor. They're in a permanent position.
And were you led to believe, Governor, that if you ridded the Minnesota State House of this person, he or she would be replaced by someone and you wouldn't even know who that person was?
Well, I don't know. There was a change because the original one that only myself and my chief of staff apparently were allowed to know. Now, I won't say who it is, Judge, because then you'll end up like Scooter Libby in jail. Well, although he never went to jail, but you could very well end up in jail. But all I'm stating is that there is an agent in Minnesota state government at a civil level that serves two masters, I assume, working for state government as well as working for the Central Intelligence Agency. And, their mission statement says they're not to be operational inside of the United States.
And the federal law prohibits them from being operational inside the United States. Were they operational inside the United States on November 22nd, 1963 in Dallas, Texas?
I certainly think they were. I believe in all the evidence. I've studied Kennedy now for going on 25, 30 years, and in my opinion, there's no doubt that the Lee Oswald couldn't have acted alone, that certainly there were more elements involved in the assassination of President Kennedy, but of course all information was withheld to the Warren Commission unless it pertained to Oswald. So that's how they could get away with saying everything we looked at pertained to Oswald. Here's an interesting one, Judge. I just learned this from Fletcher Prouty's book, Colonel Fletcher Prouty. And he was the Mr. X character in Stone's movie, the one played by Donald Sutherland.
Right.
He made an interesting thing in the latest book I read from him, is that the key to Kennedy's murder is not the two bullets that hit, the magic bullet and the headshot.
Right.
It's the one that missed.
Where did that come from?
Well, because if you have to assume it's a near miss because of the accuracy of the second and third shots. It struck the curb and injured a pedestrian named Mr. Teague, so they had to account for it. Well, according to Prouty, if you draw a straight line from where it hit the curb back to Kennedy's limo and beyond, it goes directly to the second floor of the Daltex building, which is where many of us feel there was a second shooter team as well as behind the grassy knoll. then if you take a straight line and go from where it hit the curb up to Oswald's shooting nest,
Right.
it's 22 feet high and 33 feet wide.
Wow.
Now,
You know what intrigues me so much about the Kennedy assassination? It's not so much what you've said, and I think you've articulated a more accurate version of history than the one we've believed. It is that a lot of people now believe you. A lot of people take it for granted that the CIA must have been involved, something that would have been anathema, almost treasonous, to have articulated in the days and weeks and months and even years immediately following his assassination.
well, Judge, if people don't look at Operation Northwoods, which was discovered when they opened up the archives after Stone's movie, Operation Northwoods didn't directly deal with the Kennedy, but it was an operation that the Joint Chiefs presented to John Kennedy as an option on Cuba.
Right.
Now, this is treason. They presented him the option that the CIA and our military would attack certain U.S. cities, make it look like the Cubans did it,
Right.
so that it would create an uproar and support an invasion of Cuba.
Right.
Isn't that treason?
Absolutely, it would have been treason had it happened.
Well, I think it's treason to suggest it.
But I have at least one colleague in the intelligence community who has said to me, I mean, it is just generally known and accepted in 2010 that some of our predecessors had much to do with the assassination of John F. Kennedy in 1963. Well, there's no statute of limitations on murder. There's no statute of limitations on conspiracy to commit murder. Do we so much accept government lying, Governor, that at some point we believe it until we stop believing it? I mean, if the CIA was involved in the assassination of JFK, why isn't anybody in the present government doing something about it?
Because you'd be run out of government. I took a book called Lee and Harvey, which deals with the dual Oswalds, which I believe there was, because it's not uncommon in the intelligence community to create two people with the same identity.
Right.
But that's a whole other ballgame. But I took this book. It's 800 pages, all noted. I gave it to a friend of mine who is a 25-year homicide detective in L.A., and it took him a year to get through it, but he finally brought it back to me, and his response was, why isn't this case being reopened?
Wow.
Because it is a murder. And I looked at him and I said, because anyone that would try would be destroyed.
Destroyed.
You would be
Either have their
if
career
I was an
destroyed or have their
attorney
body
general-
destroyed.
Well, if I was an attorney general and wanted to go into Kennedy to know what we know now and do a legitimate investigation of it, you would be destroyed by the government, the partisans, and all the people within the status quo, because they don't ever want the truth to come out. And why, I do not know.
What do you think really happened, Governor, on 9/11 or on the days and weeks preceding it with respect to the American government and the attack on the World Trade Towers, the plane in Shanksville, PA, and the attack on the Pentagon?
Well, everything I've learned leads me to believe that if we didn't participate in it, we certainly knew it was going to happen and didn't do very much to stop it for political reasons. Because all indications are that they've wanted to go into Iraq for decades, so they needed an excuse to do it. So they had multiple excuses that they deceived us on. All of our intelligence on Iraq was based on one guy, Curveball, who our intelligence community never actually even interviewed. He's held by the West Germans. They knew he had no credibility, but that was the essence of the entire Colin Powell testimony in front of the UN, was based on this Curveball character.
Just as
Let's remember, too, Judge, it isn't the first time. I was teaching at Harvard in 2004 when McNamara came through and admitted the Gulf of Tonkin incident didn't happen.
Right.
Well, this is what got us into the Vietnam War, where 58,000 of my generation were killed and probably 1 million Vietnamese killed. So we have to understand this stuff has not been done before. The Ruckstag fire of Germany, where they thought that they burnt down the Congress of Germany. Hitler blamed it on the Russians to get the Germans into war with Russia,
Correct.
when it turned out he did it himself.
Correct. I'm of the view that FDR either caused Pearl Harbor or looked the other way because he needed an excuse to get us involved in World War II. When I told people about my book, Lies the Government told you. And probably when you told people about your book, American Conspiracies, and they said, how long is it? And I said, 4,000 pages, and everybody laughed. It's because we believe that the government lies to us, and it would take 4,000 pages to explain all of those lies.
Well,
Why have we come to a culture in our society where we expect the government to cheat and lie and break its own laws?
Well, I guess I did the condensed version because I managed to get mine all done in 200 pages. I got right to the point, I think.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Before I let you go, do you think that somehow, there's your book on the screen, Jesse Ventura, American Conspiracies. Do you think that someday we will look on 9/11 the way we look on the JFK assassination today? That is, where people who question the government's involvement will be mainstream rather than looked upon as an extremist fringe.
I hope so, because there are sure a lot of unanswered questions, and the part that bugs me the most, Judge, is this. You're not even